This is Marc Sims asking a few questions, just a few questions. I have Toneal Jackson on the line from the west side of Chicago, and she is a author of 11 books. Toneal Jackson, how do you have the time to write 11 books?
Oh my goodness, Mark, I'm telling you, one day at a time, right? So I did not start out saying I want to be an author of 11 books. It literally started off with one book. That book became a national award-winning book, and then one idea led to another idea, and next thing you know, I am 11 books in. So it's literally like one book at a time.
Now, name some of your titles, because I've seen all your books. You have your children one in the book, a few of the books. You got your husband on one.
Absolutely.
You got a lot of books. Talk
Yeah,
to us about a
I
few
got
of
a
them.
few. I got a few, absolutely. So I have written across genres. So unlike many authors who will just take one genre and they are one, category and they'll stick there, I have written across the board. So I started out, my initial title was called Pleasing Your Partner, A Spiritual Guide to Happiness, in which happiness was an acronym. And I won't go into the entire acronym. I'll let your viewers Google it a little bit later, so save some type of suspense. But it's pretty much like showing how to use the word to work your relationship. So it's a spiritual book in nature, but it is ultimately a relationship book. So I've written a few relationship books. I've written some children's books. 4 girls, a lot of choices. Obviously, I am the mom of 4 girls, so that book is based upon my experiences raising my 4 girls. And then I did 4 girls learn their colors, growing up to be happy. My international award-winning book is called Inspiration from Above, Inspiration from Above, and above is also an acronym. So I have some inspirational titles in there, and then an entrepreneurial book, which is Being an Entrepreneur, How to Succeed in the Book Business. And the latest book that I released was a couple years ago, now 2017. It was my first novel entitled Love Me Please.
Okay, I'm looking at that right now. That was published in 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's been 2 years. It doesn't seem like it, but I'll definitely be making up for it in the next couple of years. I've been spending the last year and a half publishing so many other clients' books because in addition to being an author, I'm also a publisher. So I have published over a dozen different authors' books for a total of, I want to say my imprint, APS Publishing, we published over 30 books in the last 5 years.
Wow. So I know you're very busy with 4 girls and publishing and a bookstore. You're busy. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'm going to let you go. So I think we've heard it before that at least everybody has at least one good book in them. They may write 10, but they got one book that's going to be like Harry Potter or something. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of folks want to write that first book or write that second one that's really really good, but they get stuck. So you're a prolific writer. Give folks some inspiration on getting that book done.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me say this. Many authors that I have found, or at least those who desire to write, so aspiring authors, one of the things that happens is that they psych themselves out, right? So I'm also, in addition to that, I'm also a coach and a consultant. So I'm constantly, teaching people about the art of writing. And so one of the things I tell them is don't fake yourself out. I hear people all the time say, one day I'm going to write a story, or one day I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that. And I always tell them that one day and someday, the last time I checked, those are not days of the week. So you have to actually commit to the process, right? And so it's simply as simple as getting a notepad. It doesn't have to be official. You don't have to have a computer. You don't have to have all of these things that people may feel. So they may feel like they need all these technological devices to get started. You can go old school because I'm still old school. I have a ton of notebooks. Before I type one word, they're all written out in a notebook somewhere. So what I would tell people is just start writing what you feel. And so one of the reasons, though, what hinders people from writing, I believe, is the fear of success, right? It's one thing to say, to know where you are and you're comfortable with the fact that you've never written anything. But once you actually go through that process and you written it. Now it's the fear of the unknown. I don't know what's going to come next. I don't know if people are going to like what I've written. I don't know how many books it's going to sell. So all of those unknown factors are typically what prevents people from going through and finishing the process. But what I would tell them is just get started, because I promise you, once you get started and those creative juices get to flowing, then before you know it, the book will be done.
But some people, it may take them 1 year, 3 years, 5 years to complete that.
Absolutely.
I mean, some people, they stop and go, and that's okay to stop and go, right?
It surely is. It definitely is, Mark. Here's one of the things that I tell people. A lot of times you will see those ads on social media that'll say, hey, write a book in 3 days, write a book in 30 days. And for a person who does not have a life, that may be possible. And that's not to say that it doesn't work ever, okay? What can happen in 3 days, you can definitely get a dynamic outline. You can definitely put together a wonderful synopsis. You can come up with, like a overview of the book. But depending on the type of book, and this is the reason why it really is almost a gimmick, right? Because it has not, when you put something like that out in the atmosphere, you have not even identified the type of book a person wants to write. As an example, my last book, Love Me Please, that was my first novel. It took me 5 years to write that book. And the reason being, from that time, from 2012 to 2017, I actually published a host of other books, but those were all in my lane of being a nonfiction self-help type of a guru, right? This was something that was totally different, number one. Number two, the content of it was pulling from an emotional place, so I could only write so much at a time without having to be so overwhelmed. And so depending on what a person is writing, it might trigger some things, and that's okay. You might only be able to pour out a few pages at a time, and then you have to step back from that thing, because writing can be very therapeutic, it's very cathartic, and so once you get all of those emotions out and that energy out, then you really have to kind of pull back some. Sometimes people have to recover from that. And so it could definitely take you more than the 30 days that people will advertise. Now, a lot of times when you're seeing those 30 days, these are for the devotionals and the journals and the quick self-help reads that you see, which again, there's nothing wrong with any of those, because I actually specialize in a lot of those what are known as quick reads. But if you are an author or an aspiring author and you want to tell your story, most of the time it's going to take you more than a day or two to tell your story.
Toneal Jackson, you're a great inspiration. Your information will be on the bottom of this video, and I think people will call you, because you can't do it by yourself. They got to call Toneal Jackson on the west side of Chicago. Thank you for being on the program. Thank you.